and welcome everyone, Honoree-Louise here with my first discussion video. Today we are going to talk about languages. Obviously, I'm not just going to answer the question of what my go-to language for reading and writing is. I think most of you would have guessed that it's English, and that's probably true for a lot of us. I do want to go further than that though. So on the reader side, I'm going to talk about how the languages that we are fluent in may affect what we read. Conversely, maybe what we would like to read affect what languages. On the writer side, it's kind of simpler, but because I'm multilingual, I'm going to talk about why English is my chosen language for writing in. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to the discussion. One thing I noticed throughout the years is as soon as I started being able to read in English well enough, a large proportion of what I read are works that were written in English originally. It's more than just that I don't need to rely on translation in order to read these works anymore. I think I also stopped reading books that are translated from other languages into either Vietnamese or English. Part of that is availability, but looking back, I think there's another reason that I was doing that subconsciously, which is I feel like if I read works in English, that's where I can actually get really close to what the author originally want to express. And given that there are a lot of books and we need to prioritize, I kind of prioritize books that I can read in the original language. Another thing is that I used to read a lot more French literature before I started learning French, which sounds counterintuitive. But the thing is, when I started learning French, I would be like, just a few more years and I would be able to read this in French instead of reading a translation. The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books, but I haven't reread it for years because I would be like, oh, just a couple more years and I will be able to reread it, but in French. I think I'm still going to reread the books this year, even though my French is not any better. The problem is I still don't know whether I'm gonna read a translation again or I'm gonna just try with the French text anyway. So there's a trade-off between reading in the language that you're fluent in and be completely sure about your reading comprehension, but having to go through a translator. I think the concern about the translation not completely embodying the actual original text is valid because you see a lot of works that have multiple translations and there are recommendations for which translation that you should go for. And sometimes there's no consensus about which one is better because some translation is better in one way but it's worse in other. So there's no replacement for the original text. On the other hand, if I choose to read the book in French, then I probably miss a lot of things due to my French not being super good. But then, I actually read the original text, so certain things that would have been transformed in the translation, I might still be able to pick up on them. Obviously, the arguments that I just presented completely ignore the fact that by reading in a language that you're still learning, you get better at that language. I do want to separate choosing based on wanting to learn the language more and basing on wanting to really enjoy your reading experience. Another thing that I want to talk about is if you really need to rely on translation, which one would you choose? Earlier, I kind of touched on the fact that there may be multiple translations of one work into one target language. But for now, I'm going to talk more about people who are multilingual and can potentially choose between different translations into different languages. Personally, I also like to follow the same principle of being as close to the original as possible. So I tend to want to have the target language and the original language of the text to be as similar as possible. Now we come to the other side, which is something that you want to read may influence your decision of which language to pick up. I actually tried to learn Japanese for a while in order to read manga, but my experience so far is that it hasn't really stuck because I don't have enough motivation. I do think that I may end up learning one particular language just to be able to read the original though, and that is literary Chinese. Usually there need to be other motivation in addition to wanting to read in a certain language for you to actually go through with learning that language though. For example, for literary Chinese, I would like to learn it. Also because it will help me a lot in learning to write nom, which used to be the script for the Vietnamese language before we switched to the alphabet. The reason is rather history dependent. The thing is, I've never done any creative writing in Vietnamese before, except for some poetry in primary school. The question is though, when I first took up writing, why did I choose English? And it's entirely possible that at that point I chose it because of the wider audience. I don't think that's the main reason though. If you've seen my channel introduction video, you know that I started out by writing Harry Potter fanfiction. And it's true that you have a bigger audience if you write in English. But one more practical reason at that point for me is that I read Harry Potter in English, and it would have been kind of weird to write fanfiction in Vietnamese. So that's it for my experience with reading and writing in multiple languages or just choosing between them. I'm super curious about what you guys do in your own reading and writing experience, so please leave a comment and share. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And I see you all in another video. Bye!